Uh, Happy new moon. Happy great solar eclipse. I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should have looked at it. Or particularly tune into or tap into it. But I'm here to talk about it. So happy new moon in Aries of all things. Solar eclipse in Aries as well. And the last update, I want to say it was Saturday. What was the 5th? CERN announced stable beams on its website, which means the Hadron Collider is ready for a new season of physics data. And learning just a little bit more about that was interesting because they like lengthen and constrict these light beams and stabilize its frequency to ensure possible data in the future, or with new experiments. It's like a calibration thing, I suppose. A calibration of light, or lasers, or particles, and sets up for a whole new mysterious world, I suppose. And there's a lot of speculation on what comes with that, and how it affects our lives. So that's something interesting to dive into. With the moon in Aries, amongst many other things. What a little party. And it's funny, it kind of looks like a pool cue setup. Or like when you line up all the pool balls to break them. To break into a new game. Interesting how that works. Chiron, Sun, Mercury, all in Aries. I do deem or seem to acknowledge this as a very definitive or true nodal shift. And I do think or get a sense of this planetary collaboration as a sort of touching and sending the message. The way a lot of astrologers maybe read yads, or these, hands of gods touching, but maybe this is science touching. Whatever you would deem that to be. But also, those like little, those like light message things where you can like touch it and it sends messages miles away. Kind of like that interference, I suppose. Interference or exchange of information, which I feel will arm major Jupiter-Uranus transits of information, because the moon does hop very quickly into Taurus. It like gathers right in the middle of all of the shenanigans, and then like today will be pretty proper in Taurus. So again, these sort of stable beams or stable calibration of light, but it happened very fast. It happened very fast, so be patient with yourself in observing changes, or observing shifts, or observing the ways in which you will feel affected by this and what's to come, as it does unfold. With so much energy in Chiron, I do feel like that's something to pay attention to, which is specifically wounds. What hurts the most? What are you sensitive to? I know I've said triggers in the past, but Chiron can be very deep psychological wounds, deep heartbreak, and such and such. I do think the antithesis of this could be, or the anti-inflammatory sort of ease for all of this Aries energy, could be directly in Black Moon Lilith's placement. This Lilith would be in Virgo, again, antithetical complementary color to it, which I think points a lot toward maybe a more mature take on things, a more mature perspective, or maturation in general, which is, again, where patience may be involved in the way that you'll see shifting, whether it's maturing in your body or maturing in your mind, or situations maturing, what have you. But toward healing and maturing these things, and a lot of that comes with, a lot of maturation comes with wisdom And though that may have been ignited through strife, there's a long-standing luminosity because of it. I think that will lead to maybe Aries' uncomfortable placement, or making Aries uncomfortable in its placement by, especially because it's Aries season, Aries is proper. I think saying no to somebody in that time probably doesn't rub them the right way, or with, strengths in that. But again, in maturation and healing and patience in that, will break or lends to breaking patterns of self-victimization that often is attached to repression of pain, and maybe a denial of our own vulnerability. I think denial of vulnerability for a lot of people can come because of underlying senses of insecurity. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I have a hunch, a theory, I suppose, that in both dating or love and heartbreak, we've socially overlaid the two and obscured them to where inferiority not only comes in correction, but in the ways that we identify success internally. And I think a lot of masculine energies in the world, be it men or self-identifying men or what have you, or just the masculinity within all of us, or the masculinity that we see in the world, sort of overextending, overreaching for sake of inferiority. And that's often a sort of too many cooks in the kitchen scenario, or too much stronghold, too much strangulation in an area, for fear of not being needed, for fear of not being deemed needed, because we attach so much love and with value of success and with value input in very tangible terms. So I do think a lot of men feel or attach love to what they can give, because if there's nothing to give in a situation, they're no longer needed, they're no longer loved, they're no longer necessary. And not just men, this is also maybe a key characteristic of what people would define as an anxious attachment style, and that is a wounded aspect in some right, often buried under a lot of defensiveness and hyper independence, which I am constantly constantly evaluating in my own right, just to keep things fresh. But there's a lot of power in owning your truth and not confessing, but stepping up, speaking out, purging yourself of the weight of repression. I do think that's why a lot of things are also coming out in the world. A lot of information being laid upon us. And interesting for the theories about the eclipse or CERN's effects on us. I had a moment, I want to say it was Saturday, perhaps it was Friday, but I had a moment where I was like, imagine a world where Beyonce is not queen and Aaliyah took the reins and won us all over and there was a song playing, and I was looking out into the crowd, and it was like, oh wow, is this that world? Is this what that world would look like? And it was a very fun thought, and maybe that's just my own creative writing or creative exercises in my head, but I found it very interesting, and I think that maybe a bit of hope in these interesting times would be to find purpose over pain, and that's very much where Black Lilith lends to this maturation of these wounds that Aries and all of the planets in Aries may pick at. I think that also comes with maybe not a common placement to read, but Palestina being in, I believe, Sagittarius, and kind of stepping away from all of these energies carrying forward, or plotting and planning and communicating. Let us not forget, or get lost in searching for purpose. Again, questioning this antithesis Libra, and philosophically so ruminating on problem solving, and previous things that I've talked about, tertiary solutions, and seeing above the foggy binary of this overindulgence in puritanical sort of ethics, finding your own middle path, and again, your own truth. That does lead to an era of carrying forth ideas and allowing what we don't hold on to shift. And that's also, I think, in mind of all the warrior planets. When you have to exchange your, pack in video games and sacrifice maybe, one gun for another, or, one tool for another, or, one medic kit for another, or you have to take time to, build these things so that it does lighten your load. But again, patience, planning, all of those things, and overarching purpose over pain, and not to get lost in searching, but to understand the uniting thread that innately comes forth in the things that draw you, and that can lead you to the things that you want to expel, or the things that overall bring you absolute joy. But both are very clarifying, and both are important information to carry forward, especially in pattern building, which is what a lot of new times are exploring the possibilities of. So with that, we'll pull some cards and see what moves. All right. Since we're not doing everybody today, we're just doing a collective. Let's breathe together. Tap into this new time that we are in. Post-eclipse, post-new moon. Take a deep breath in. And out. Take a deep breath in. And out. Take a deep breath in. And out. Okay, that's really interesting. Influence and how that leads will be a big thing, and that's again this Palestina Sagittarius versus all of this Aries energy, and the antithesis of Black Moon Lilith being more mature about its outcomes, or mature toward the outcomes, mature in the way that it's handling things. I felt very full or solid, or empty and sort of vibratory, maybe achy. And what I had said about clarifying the things to let go, or the things to keep, the things we bind to, or the things that we want to move from, and shifting, and what I said earlier, in earlier videos about, puritanical culture, or hyper escapism culture. This is something that I think religious folk very much identify with, being filled with the Holy Spirit, or possessed. or what it feels like to be sort of empty of hope or empty of spirit in your own right, which is, I think, unfortunately, what a lot of people feel because they attach it to success or attach it to some sort of monetary value or gain, like fat wallets or full souls, when in fact that is not true. Rich people are filthy rich, but they are not wealthy. People of full truth and full internal truth and identity of self outside of identity as attachments, I think have true wealth and have true success. And that becomes a very emanating safe space, which is the success of touching and changing many lives. Changing many lives. Let's be careful about the use of touch with everything going on. But so it did feel very the pendulum of being full or not, the pendulum of being fully guided or not. And I think that is maybe where we waver and where we find worry as to where this eclipse or new moon or Hadron Collider's activities will spit us out. And how we will ultimately get spit out on the other side of the year. But beyond that swinging, there is stability. Beyond that pendulum feeling, which still kind of has my heart racing, there is stability. There is balance to be had. The Six of Wands in the center of this is really one of my favorites. Because it's such a calm and balanced card. Very literally, dude's like balanced on one foot, which always makes me think like chair with three legs. And sort of finding this openness as well. This openness and understanding, this openness and connection. Six is building perfection. However, this does come up inverted, and not that that's a bad thing, but that is a very internalized thing. And the way we oscillate in our minds can only be stabilized really by our own ability to control it. In the same way that, you know, if you think about the things people say to quell anxiety attacks in public or what have you, is, you know, you stabilize the particles of what you're acknowledging. You know, you name, what is it, like 4 things you can smell and 3 things you can hear and 2 things you can see and 1 thing something. 1 thing, I don't know what the actual thing is. I think within that perfection, it is less about building outward or externally. It is about understanding what is built internally, and that will come with a lot of data analysis, and like I said, pattern recognition. And perhaps this is where we see things a little bit more clearly, and where we understand our habits a little bit more. And that does come with some, you know, spiked activity because of, you know, nice weather and change of seasons and all of this invigorated activity that's very much the joy of Aries season. However, again, there's the patience element. 3 of clubs, bottom of the deck. The patience of waiting for plants to grow and not overwatering them, which is always a task and a difficulty. Poor plants. With that, even water is an element of information storage. So what is the truth or reality of what it is we're bringing with us? What is the way that we're speaking to ourselves inside and outside of these portals, if you will? Because you can time jump all you want. You will remain the same homie if you refuse to change. That pattern will continue regardless of what the setting is. So understanding that. Understanding that can maybe help understand the fears that come with change. However, Two of Diamonds, Nine of Swords, the change has happened. Move forth enthusiastically. Um, with the assumption of purity or goodness, or however it is you want to be defined positively. Find better words than good. Although I found it really interesting that something I read in the Bible Museum was that good often meant Christ-like, or was used as synonymous with Christ-like. So bad ultimately becomes evil, and again we have these funny binaries. In a world that was not created by something that understood it in that way, and as such, I remind myself every day that believing in good and evil is kind of a farce, in good and bad, and it's a fun exercise to always try to find more accurate wording, more descriptive wording, and in times like these, I think we can get really caught in the fear of the bad, and I do think there's a lot of acceleration with, fears of witchcraft or astrology, and the way people demonize it, as if it's not part of the pattern recognition process, which is necessary to equip yourself with, and has been used as such for a very long time. But rather than focus on the fears of the bad things, focus on the ways in which you want to feel that bring more ease and relief. If that's good, then party on. But focusing on those things to bring forth a brighter light with which we see. And I hope that the eclipse experience was that for you. I hope it was as good for you as it was for me. But I hope that upon that bit of darkness, it feels as though the sun came back brighter. And I, for one, think the after effects were quite magnificent. And we will find ourselves ruminating on them quite a bit. The Nine of Swords that follows this finds itself ruminating, questioning, alleviating, sort of treating. And again, I think that's maybe where we find ourselves understanding the antithesis of Black Moon Lilith to Aries and Black Moon Lilith's placement to Aries in Libra, opposite the new moon. I got my words jumbled there. It's okay. You understood what I was saying. The Nine of Swords inverted. Nine of Spades inverted. Same shit. I think that's where, upon pondering thoughts, we find ourselves spiraling in one way or another. Or we find imagination getting carried into a pattern that perhaps we do or don't like. It's kind of two equal heights, great measures. Two equal heights, up or down, tree of life, tree of death. I feel like this is also maybe a mourning process of the things that do ultimately get let go of, whether it be by choice or not. And I think there's a homeostasis, like a temperature difference that will exist around this kind of holding on to acceleration or letting go of obliteration. I hope that means we find cooler temperatures in the head and body, and sort of acknowledging to keep the temple floor cool. Um, my skin feels like cold marble. Um, but conversely, rather than the heat of uh, constant annoyance and blood rising and inflammation and while that is necessary for a wound to heal, the blood rising and not inflammation, but blood rising, um, when we poke and prod at it, we very literally promote our chances for infection and inflammation. And I think that that's where, again, this Palestina and Black Lynn Lilith influence of maturation and problem solving will wants to lend a hand to Aries' sort of temper tantrums, or again, just because internally, like internally leaking emotions, and not necessarily knowing what to do with them, and rather than allow that to let you spin, or spin out. Uh, Again, this Nine of Spades, I think, can find alleviation in a cognitive awareness of those emotions. It's as much as Aries may be like scream and shout and say fuck because it helps you deal. And don't get me wrong, I do often, sometimes just shout or sing or make sounds because I'm just processing so much, and it's one way to get it all out. Swearing has been Mythbusters proven to help the body deal with pain. However, when you release emotions without cognitively recognizing them, I think it fails to truly understand or honor them. And I think it's sort of again like a leak system. When we ought to be leak proof and utilize these things, when we utilize these things in a cognitive way, it becomes more beneficial all around. Rather than like primal screaming, utilizing the voice in a masterful way to convey. From what I gather in studying voices, this is also why like screaming in metal is particularly difficult and also particularly awesome. What an interesting way to cognitively release frustration and create frustration to some degree, or friction, not frustration, and utilize those things rather than, put a fist through a wall or break something or what have you. It reminds me, actually, now that I say that, it reminds me of the difference between like progressive metal mosh pits and like hardcore mosh pits. The hardcore kids are very much like young Aries, and progressive metals are very much the Black Lynn Lilith. Where, they're just trying to release, they're not trying to hurt nobody, they're just trying to move. Very cool cats. Pick you up when you fall, all that jazz. Which is a very positive outlook for a Nine of Spades. For what the Nine of Swords could be, I do think the Nine of Spades is a much more wish-granting card. It's almost like seeing the full outcome of the words that you speak, or very literally seeing like how your spit coagulates, and what images arise from that, because it is a sort of your own natural biome, and I think a fun way to look at the energy that you hold at any given moment. But I'm not trying to just make a spit take. Yeah, inner deliberation rather than necessarily picking a path. Sometimes paths pick you and they pick you for the right reasons rather than sometimes the reasons we pick paths. And understanding your arsenal or your toolbox, understanding the tools that you have to deal with any given path, and understanding again that unity thread that kind of weaves us through many of our paths. For the many hats I've worn, there's absolutely singular threads that weave those paths together or have brought them to me. Um, how interesting. What an interesting internal little pyramid. Um, Rest well and be patient with yourself. I don't think this time is specifically about hardcore movement, um, but I do think uh, prepare your mind now and you'll move flawlessly when the time comes. Prepare your mind and your heart now and you will move fluidly when the time comes, without second guessing. And amidst all of the obfuscations around us, um, this is the perfect time to hone in on your truest perspective, uh, and understand your clear place in a world full of this or that, or us and them, and understanding that it is not all there is. Yeah, party on. Love you. Thank you for rocking out. I hope that this offers you some fun solace after the spikes of energy that occur in times of new moons and eclipses. Oh my. But much love, purpose over pain, for true endurance. Other than that, rock on. And don't die. I will see you next time.